Hey everyone, this is Brian Schwabe from the Student Physical Therapist, and this episode of Brian's Corner, we are with Zac Cupples. Zac is a board-certified orthopedic clinical specialist, certified strength and conditioning specialist. He is currently working halfway in the private sector, but he also does quite a bit in the online space with telehealth, online consultations, mentorship. He's a former NBA strength and conditioning coach as well as a physical therapist, and he runs zaccupples.com. Zac, welcome to the show.
Brian, thank you so much for having me. It's nice to virtually meet you finally.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Zac, for some of our viewers out there, tell us a little bit about your background and what you're up to these days.
Sure. So I'm a physical therapist, strength coach, and I've been practicing since 2012. I've been all over the place. I've lived in Iowa, Illinois, Arizona, Memphis, Tennessee, and I'm now going to be living in Las Vegas. And I've worked in a lot of different settings. I've spent time doing travel physical therapy. That's what I did most recently. Spent about a season and a half in the NBA. And I also worked private practice, both in a hospital setting and just private practice outpatient. POPs, ooh, scary. But it's actually a pretty good setup. So I've done a lot of things, and right now I'm at the point where I working at Elevate Sports Performance and Healthcare in Las Vegas, Nevada. I start in a couple weeks. I'm pretty excited about that. It's a nice training rehab hybrid location where we're doing cash pay, which is pretty exciting, and I'm really excited with the team I'm going to work with. And then I also have been running zaccupples.com since 2013. So almost my whole career. And it started out as just my way of trying to learn the stuff that I wanted to apply with my patients and my clients better. And it's kind of morphed into how do I take the concepts that we learn in our field, because a lot of it's really complicated and it can be hard to understand. And the people in our industry are not taught to be educators. We're taught to be clinicians. And it's kind of my mission with that to try and take the concepts that we're learning in our field and making them ridiculously simple so we can apply this material with our patients and clients so we can help more people. And that's really kind of been my mission as of now. And I do that through blogging. I do that through my course, Human Matrix. I do that through working with people via movement consultations, mentoring, and training. And that's where I'm at right now.
Very cool. And I'm not going to lie, I've definitely been on your site over the years, and you've had some very thorough blogs with different courses you've taken. And you've taken probably more continuing education than I've seen most people take. So I've definitely, been on your blog multiple times, and that's kind of how I found you in the first place. So with all the things you've done over the years, you've done mentoring, you obviously are going through a ton of education as well. Where do you find that balance of, hey, I'm still working as a clinician, but I like to educate, the masses as well from a fitness and clinician standpoint? And what is your focus on with that?
Yeah, balance has never been my strong suit by any means. I would say I tip myself very much so towards the workaholic. That's kind of my Achilles heel at some points. But initially when I was first starting out, I really let my social life and dating life and a lot of these other things, I kind of put that on the back burner to really focus on learning and working with clients. I was working my first couple jobs out upwards of 40 to 50 hours a week, and then spending the weekends learning, writing, and all that. And so you let a lot sacrifice in the beginning. As the years have gone on and I've ran out of Con Ed to take, I've kind of swung a little bit more towards the middle in that regard, because it's just if you pursue anything with intensity for too long, there's going to be negative consequences that happen. And in my case, there were some health issues that I was running into. So I've had to try to find the balance. And I found that by spending more time being social, spending time with my girlfriend, now that I have one of those, and working or seeing fewer clients, it's allowed me to be better and more successful in all those areas, teaching, working with clients and all that, just because I have more energy available. But when I did an internship with Bill Hartman when I was in PT school, and that was very transformative. And he talked a lot about periodizing your life. So when we're periodizing things in fitness, you spend a certain amount of time focusing on building qualities while maintaining other qualities. And I'm a big fan of doing that, not just throughout life, but even within specific years. So right now I'm focusing quite a bit on doing some extra content for my seminar. That has reduced the amount of time that I'm spending working with clients right now. But when I move to Las Vegas, I'm going to be getting a lot more clients. So then the balance is going to be shifting. And then it's a matter of maintaining my relationship and actually devoting a lot more time to that, because we're spending more time together. And you just kind of have to juggle these things and have one primary focus while, making sure you maintain the other qualities. Because if I just worked and I never spent time with my girlfriend, well, then our relationship would suffer, and that wouldn't be good. On the flip side of that, if all I did was spend time with my girlfriend, then my work would suffer. And then, so you just have to, you have to make sure you're maintaining what's important to you while also making sure you're being successful in the areas you want to be successful in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something we struggle with as clinicians, especially when you want to be entrepreneurial or you want to dive into other things that you realize you have access to. I think you said it best earlier. Clinicians are taught to be clinicians, but they're not taught to be educators. They don't realize, I do a lot of consulting, so I like to consult. I like to do videos. I help run the student physical therapists. We all find our passions within the field of physical therapy and fitness, and that balance is hard, and we're not told we can do those things. But I think especially with the way physical therapy is going now, in some respects, a lot of people want to do those things because they're getting burned out a little bit more, or they're going to these cookie cutter continuing education seminars and they're not feeling fulfilled, or they're feeling like there's you're only being put in a small box. And I know you're doing the human matrix is your course. Can you tell us a little bit about that course specifically and what that entails?
Yeah. So my course was kind of made out of a little bit of frustration. I feel like spite is always the big motivator for a lot of things that I do. But it's kind of my summation of what the essential concepts are to improve someone's movement capabilities, whether that's someone in pain or someone who has performance or fitness related goals. There's a lot of stuff in our field where we have these camps. They're like warring factions, and they're all 3 letters or 4 letters in terms of their faction name. And you'll hear people say, well, this group is kind of similar to this group, but we have this thing differently. Or we're kind of saying the same thing, but we're attacking this problem from just different angles. But rarely do we ask what that same thing is. So my goal with my seminar is to answer that question. What is the same thing? And the answer is movement in my eyes. So if we can understand movement, develop a comprehensive movement model, and then apply simple interventions. And that's the key. I think with our field, because with a lot of continuing education, we can get really fancy and sexy. But when we go too far down that spectrum, we inevitably lack or don't spend as much time focusing on the fundamentals with our people. It's just like in basketball. Behind the back passes and alley-oops are really cool. But if you don't have the vertical to dunk, or you can't throw a chest pass, you're not going to be that successful. So we have to master those things first. And our clients especially have to master those things first, because they're not as versed in movement as we are. So we can't expect them to nail a lot of complex movements. That's what my seminar is hoping to do. And I'm really trying to make sure with the people that I'm working with or the attendees that you're not going to get inundated with all of this information and then be lost when you try to go and apply it on Monday. I have material, and I'm beefing up a lot of the material. Hopefully going to release a new, the new pre-course material either this week or next that helps you get the most out of the seminar. Especially with a lot of the stuff that I talk about in terms of breathing and movement and position. And, you talk about concentric, eccentric, expansion, compression, all this stuff. Well, you can get lost in the lingo and you can get lost in the anatomy. I'm hoping to solve that problem with the pre-course material. And then afterwards, I'm going to have a lot of material as well that should help the person who attends my seminar better apply the material with their clientele. And I want to do all that I can to be supportive to those who attend, because I get it. When you go back on Monday, it can be really hard when you've, got essentially drinking through a fire hose with the 2-day seminar. I'm trying to do all that I can to make sure my clients and the people who attend the seminar learn the material and they can do all that they can to apply that material effectively on Monday. And that's where I'm trying to differentiate myself with Human Matrix.
That's great. I love that, because it's almost more principles based over a system, which I think, most of us run into over the years as we do more and more continuous education is we see all these systems, and every one of them is flawed in some capacity. And there's a million different ways to get to a certain solution. And, ultimately we have to respect those principles more than the systems themselves, at least in my opinion. And it sounds like you take those approaches and you try to simplify it with movement, which is so important. Now, you mentioned basketball, and I have to ask, because I'm a big basketball guy, and we've talked about this briefly. You spent a little bit of time in the NBA, and I'm sure there's plenty of viewers out there that are interested in potentially going that route. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with that, how that came about, challenges and successes you had with that?
Yeah. So there's a saying that in order to be ready for a job like that, you have to have the preparation, but you also have to have the opportunity. And fortunately, I had spent a lot of my early career working on the preparatory side of things, where I, did a lot of learning, took a lot of continuing education, was spending time teaching, blogging, all that stuff. And it was kind of one of those things where I knew someone who knew someone, and that's how I was able to secure an interview with the Memphis Grizzlies. So it was like, I remember I flew to Memphis. It was like the worst experience ever, because I was supposed to fly out on like a Thursday. My flight got canceled, and I ended up doing a red eye to Memphis, like no sleep, or maybe like 2 hours of sleep in the airport, get to Memphis, go through like 8 different interviews. But despite all that, I was able to secure the job, and it was really cool. But I got there mid-season. It was tough because a lot of guys were already in their routines. I was with the new team, and it's kind of hard finding your way, especially when you don't have that guidance in terms of what your role is exactly. And unfortunately, I came in, and there was some fear in terms of me coming in mid-season. One, and I also think too, I made the mistake of coming in with a bit of an ego. Because I was brought in by the front office. And I think the combination of those two things led to some clashing within the group. So for those who want to come in to pro sports, I strongly recommend you come in humble and you come in eager to learn and be collaborative. And that's something that I've learned and applied with the places I've worked beyond that to success. So I spent the first season in the summer with the NBA team. And it was a really cool experience because even though we had our issues as a performance staff, we did have there's a lot of freedom and flexibility to help these guys, because you have two things to your advantage. You have time, and it might not be time within a day. Like I might only have 20 minutes with a guy, but I have literally almost every day to work with them. So that adds up. And you can see change happen quickly. And you have resources. That's the other thing. So if I wanted to get an expensive treatment modality or something to help me in the weight room, it was done. And it would be done ASAP. So in that sense, you can be a lot more successful with these guys. And not only that, but because they're elite athletes, they tend to pick up stuff a lot faster. So the progressions oftentimes can be a lot quicker than it might be with your general population client that you're working with in the clinic once a week or twice a week. So those two things were really cool. Where I'd say I had an even better experience was when I went to the D League. It was the D League at the time. I know it's the G League now. The following season. And that was basically my show, which was really cool. I learned a lot because I had way more opportunities and ways to intervene with my people. Instead of, like, when I was in the NBA, most of my stuff was on the corrective exercise side of things with a little bit of strength conditioning and a little bit of manual therapy. In the D League, I was doing it all. I was the PT, I was the strength coach. I did some sports science-based things from a load management standpoint. I would work with the coaches in terms of determining what the best practice time was so we could maximize sleep and rest days. Did some nutrition-based things. And with that, I had to learn a little bit about a lot of different fields. But because I was able to intervene using a lot of different tactics, I was able to get way more successful outcomes with my people. And that's when I really learned that in order to really be successful with someone, and not just getting them out of pain, but maximizing their health, well-being, and performance, it just can't be physical therapy. It just can't be strength conditioning. It just can't be nutrition. It's got to be everything. It's got to be maximizing all of the qualities that someone has to be able to have in order to meet their goals. You can have the best training program out there, but if your person can't sleep because they can't get their tongue up to the roof of their mouth and they're snoring, that's a problem, and it probably needs to be addressed. And it was that experience that has really kind of led me down to spending more time outside of our profession in terms of my learning. Because I think the people that we work with need a lot of interventions that go beyond just the movement side of things. So even though it was short-lived, it was an incredibly rewarding experience. I learned a lot about the interdisciplinary care needed to help people. And I learned a lot about myself in terms of what I needed to work on as a person to be a better teammate. And I even though I wish I would have handled things differently in a lot of respects, I have no regrets because I learned a lot. And it's the lessons I learned in those battlegrounds that have brought me where I'm at today.
Very cool. And this is another reason why I wanted to bring you on, because you've had so many eclectic experiences over your time in your career. And I think that's what I see when I've watched your shows as well, is you bring the experience that you had in the MBA, private sector, education, all into one avenue, and you distribute it in multiple different media forms, courses, seminars, videos, blogs, the whole 9 yards. And I think it's great because it gives us as viewers and readers the ability to consume that in whatever way that we choose to. And I know you've even dabbled into telehealth, and I know you said you have a mentorship group. How do you bring all these experiences together because it can be overwhelming, right? And I think you mentioned that earlier, even with trying to set up a seminar. How do you help your clients with the online mentoring? Because I think that's where I think most clinicians are struggling, is they need some type of mentorship because they've seen all these things, or they're trying to have all these eclectic experiences, but it's not really regulated very well. So tell me about your experience with mentoring some clinicians and whatnot.
Yeah, well, the way I think mentorship works most effectively is I help the people who I work with, or I guide them to the best way to apply the material that they're consuming. I think one thing we run into that's a problem with educating ourselves is there's a lot of FOMO and keeping up with the Joneses. Robert Sapolsky releases Behave, and everyone's now got to read Behave. But the problem is how do you apply that material? If you don't apply the material, then your chances of learning and retaining are going to be limited. And that's why, I read this in Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Work Week. There's a difference between just-in-case learning versus just-in-time learning. So just-in-case learning will be, I'm going to read this material because I know at some point I might need it, versus just-in-time is, I have a problem that's right in front of me that I need to solve, and I'm going to consume some material so I can better solve this problem. If you spend a lot of time doing just-in-case learning, you're not going to learn the material as well. Just-in-time learning, though, you will learn more effectively because you're going to apply. So the way I design my mentorship program is to help the person who I'm working with spend more time doing just-in-time learning. So we go over particular concepts, which could range from learning stuff about the upper thorax and how that applies to movement. And then I will take that information, I will help them summarize, or I'll have them summarize it. And then most importantly, I'm going to have them apply that material with their clients. And then what I'll have them do is, if maybe it's like coaching them through a specific assessment and exercise progression, I'll have my mentee actually video themselves doing that. And then they'll send me the video. I will take that video and I'll use my iPad and do some drawing and stuff like that, and actually critique them in terms of what they could have done better. And I think that's where mentorship comes into play, is you get that immediate feedback from someone who's not in the weeds, to see where you could do better and improve. And it's by going through that process that you save a lot of time, because instead of trying to reflect on where you erred or where you could have done better, you have an unbiased perspective giving you that guided reflection, and you can learn a lot faster. I think that's what made me be successful in a lot of avenues quicker than most, is because I had the privilege of spending time learning with Bill Hartman. And I was able to take a lot of the trial and error that he himself went through, and he saved me a lot of time. I'm trying to do the same for the mentees that I work with, whether it's with the online version or whether it's with Human Matrix.
Very cool. I love it. So I ask every person I interview on the show where they see themselves in 5 to 10 years. And I know you're going to give me an interesting answer because you've done so much. But if you had to answer this right now, where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years?
This is always a tough one because, one thing I will say, Brian, I don't necessarily like the 5 to 10 year plan, because I'll give you an example. What if, someone gives you this just incredible opportunity that you can't pass up 2 years from now that's different than your 5 to 10 year plan? But let's say that doesn't happen. My hope is in 5 to 10 years is that I'm spending a little bit less time working with people and more time educating. Like I think ideally I would like to have, anywhere from 5 to 15 people who I work with on a regular basis or semi-regular basis, where I'm controlling a lot of variables, just like I did in the D League. So, I'm someone's PT, I'm someone's strength coach, I'm someone's nutrition person, sleep person, all of this stuff, kind of like a case manager. I see myself doing that, and then spending more time basically teaching other people how to do the same thing with their people. That's like really the people who I enjoy working with the most are people like yourself, Brian, or just people in our industry. So if I can do things to help people like us get healthier, feel better, move better, and then teach them how to do that with their clientele, then it's a big win. Because when you're working one-on-one with a client, you can only help so many people because you have so many hours in the day. I would like to go beyond that. And if I can help Brian or you who's listening with your clientele and get better results with the people you're working with, well, then I have now the capacity to indirectly help a lot more people. So I see myself doing that. Another thing that I'd like to do that really excites me is I'd like to take that holistic approach and be able to help someone who's underserved. So maybe if, I have someone who can't afford, who's had a stroke and they can't afford to get the care that they need, I would like to have the approach that I use and be able to apply that with them. So maybe it's like we take the money that we've earned and get this person groceries so they're eating healthy foods, and we give them things from a movement and exercise perspective that helps them in that regard, or we do things to improve their sleep. That's something that I really would like. Maybe that's kind of in the 10-year plan, to be able to offer to people who just can't afford what we need to be successful. Because really, like, what I've learned when you get into some of the more esoteric methods that I think are really effective to helping people maximize their health and well-being, it's not cheap. If you have sleep apnea and you don't want to use the CPAP, which does save lives, but there's some good research showing that it might not have the positive effects on the cardiovascular side of things that you would think. You might need some expensive cash-based treatments that can range from $10,000 on the low end to $60 to $100K on the high end. How do you help that person if they can't afford it? I'd like to find a way to see if we can make that more affordable, and perhaps that's where things go down the line, or we find ways to catch it earlier. So that's kind of what I think excites me in the future, Ryan.
That's awesome. I can tell you're super passionate about that, and you've definitely spent time thinking about it and being reflective, which I think is so important, especially as you grow your career in whatever way you want to go. Which is the point, right? Try to find what makes you happiest and what you're most passionate about, so you love it every day. This is great. So how can the viewers find more information about you? I know you have websites, you have social media, you're doing all these courses, things like that. Can you give us some information on how we can find more information on you and how to contact you?
Sure. Best place to find me is zaccupples.com. That's my website. And there that's kind of where you're going to get all of the information that I'm putting out, whether it's blogs, whether it's the podcast, Zac Cupples Show. Everything is there. You can also, if you sign up for my newsletter there, you'll get access to the Human Matrix Foundations course, which is absolutely free. And I'm going to be revamping that, making some huge changes. So, if you're kind of getting into some of the breathing stuff that I talk about or that others talk about, and you're like, man, how do I build how do I even learn this stuff? I don't know where to start. I think the Human Matrix Foundation course is going to solve that problem. And there's lots of other free stuff that you'll get there. You'll be able to access and sign up for Human Matrix if you want. Also, a lot of the services that I offer, online movement consultations, where I virtually take people through some of the stuff that you and I do, Brian, and we find ways to help people move better, feel better, all that stuff. I do that one-on-one. I also do that with coaches and clinicians. If they have a troubled case, we can kind of co-treat, so to speak, and help them work through that. And you can get that there. You can get online training there, where we would basically design a program that's specifically tailored to your fitness goals, but takes into consideration what your movement restrictions are. And then mentoring, which would be, teaching you essentially how to apply some of the concepts that we talk about on the website. And just because, Brian, I'm excited for your group. Anyone who listens to this, if they say Brian sent me, you get 10% discount on anything that we offer. So I appreciate you having me on. But definitely go to zaccupples.com, find all that. Social media wise, Twitter and Facebook are / or at @zcupples. That Instagram, baby, as I always like to say, is Zac Cupples. And then if you want like a bazillion exercises, which I'm working on organizing and giving you the why, the who, the what, the where, and the how. My YouTube channel is, I think, over 1,000 videos as of right now. Just search Zac Cupples on YouTube. And if you find me in one of those places, you ought to be in business.
Good stuff, man. So you guys heard it. Definitely go to his website. He has tons of services. Even if you're just interested in learning how to do some of the things he's done, or you want to kind of get your feet wet, if you want to learn, you definitely can go to his website, go to his social media. He's got a lot of different avenues. Zac, thank you so much for being on the show today. We really appreciate it. I think our viewers are going to get a lot out of this. Definitely, if you have more questions for Zac, please contact him on his website or on his social media. Thanks again,
Brian. Zac. Thank you for having me. You're a legend.
Take care, man.
See ya.